Time is it?
Passa, passa,
Time.
passa, passa.
Time. Every gal, every gal, every gal, every gal. I go me a
Passa, passa.
Lawrence Eulette is here. Woo! Insert clap. Like sounds or something. I don't even know. So currently Larry has his own firm where he is a litigator. That sounds so weird to me. Anyway, because when I think of litigators, I think of like corporate litigators who like stand it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It sounds weird. Prior though, Larry started out his journey before even law school as an accountant, and worked for large companies such as PwC, right, Larry? PwC? PwC, that's what I remember. And then, well, obviously at some point went to law school because he's crazy. And then once he was finished that, did law for a while. What did you do? Like, you didn't actually do law under like a company. You did accounting and tax stuff as a lawyer, right?
Yeah, I never worked for anyone as a lawyer.
Okay, got it. And then went into his own practice, doing family law. I don't know what else you did. All I know is about family law. Started off as family law in your own practice, and then transitioned to probate. And let me see, what else? I don't know what else you do right now outside of probate. So you can fill in the blanks for us and give us fill in the holes, because if anybody on the street asked me, that's what I would tell them about you. So you can fill in the blanks about the things that you do now, maybe how you got into it, so we can know what's going on. The other job that Larry has is being my cousin and being at my beck and call whenever I have legal questions, which is way more often than I would ever admit to. All right, continue, Larry.
Yes, I am Misha's cousin. But my job, I should tell you. So I finished undergrad at Wiley College. I worked for a couple of companies, oil company and PricewaterhouseCoopers. Then I went to law school, and during law school and after law school, I continued working in corporate income tax. And I hit the glass ceiling and came out practicing on my own. And when I came out practicing law, I was like a general practitioner and just kind of loved probate administration, which estate planning, which I guess is the topic today, it's kind of a part of like the planning before probate administration. So, which I end up doing a lot more in court after someone dies. The estate plan is before you die, but after you die, we're in court. And that's pretty much it. That's the gist.
Awesome.
I mean, he sounds like the person we need to be talking to, because he's seeing the other side of this. Like, if you don't do the thing we talk about today, yes. Larry knows what it looks like on the other side.
Yes, and I like it when people don't plan. I used to be concerned, but it's more money.
Oh,
I'm done.
More money for you, not for them.
Yes, indeed.
So go on, don't plan.
It's more work, so it's more pay. So
well, tell us,
Larry his money.
Maybe you can tell us then what's the difference between the probate piece, because obviously before you, I don't know that I knew what probate was, and then what we, as the young people that we are.
The young
listen, because I just found my first gray hair. It's terrible. The year of 40, I found my first gray hair. Y'all look like y'all been seeing gray hairs, but I have not. And my mother's very gray. Anyway, as the young people that we are, what we should be doing before we reach the probate piece, because I don't know that people are aware of that. So give us some insight.
It's not unusual what you just said, that people don't know what probate administration is. In fact, someone may even have a will and believe that that's all you need to do with it. When someone passes, they don't know you have to take it to court and get it admitted to probate. It's basically going through the process of letting the world know that this document exists and this is how this person wants their property to be distributed. So in fact, I even tried advertising for it in the past, and it doesn't work. Most how I get how people come to me is other attorneys. So they'll be like, "Oh, so and so passed," or "We're trying to sell this piece of property," and they told us to find a probate attorney. I don't even know who or what that is, and they'll call an attorney they know, and they're like, "Well, I don't do that." Then they'll call me. Yeah.
Got it.
Larry, can you maybe start by sharing what you define as estate planning? Because it sounds like probate fits under this like umbrella.
Yes, so estate planning, it encompasses mainly the planning how you want to move assets. I call it the transfer of wealth, but it's more than just that, because it's not just about the assets. It's more, let's say you get to a point when you get older and you may need to you can't do anything for yourself physically. So you may have the health aspect, like, so you may need to get someone, put medical power of attorneys in place where someone that can make decisions when you can't make decisions. You have that. It may be in the case when you guys are young, you may have children, you may want to, something happens to you. What do you want? Who do you want to take care of your children? So you have to, it's planning. I'll tell you what, in general, I think people have to plan for even now as you get older, and say like maybe our parents, as they're getting to retirement, they may have an issue of they just have too much money to qualify. Like Misha's grandmother, which is my aunt, grand aunt, if you will, she's almost 100. So someone like that here may need to be, they've lived so long, they may get to a home, can't afford it. It costs a lot of money for them to be taken care of. So, I mean, I've heard places like $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Yeah. And so Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid will have to step in to help them qualify, because you technically won't qualify if you have assets over $2,000. So they
$2,000, like
they expect you to pay $5,000, but if you own everything over $2,000,
if you have 3,000,
you need to plan. They'll let you do it. I won't get off into that piece. I normally transfer it to a friend of mine that does more of the planning, like deeper than I go. So there's a look back period of like 5 years. So if you're just trying to make it real quickly, you have attorneys that that's all they do. They don't do the court part, litigation part. But but the planning, it's very important, because you may have that situation where I see it come in my practice is where someone might have a house and Medicaid will help. So I don't know how they get around that with the $2,000 limitation, but I may have to do a waiver on the back end so that the family, because that house is going to be Medicaid in Texas or all the other states, they want to be reimbursed. They'll take that. When you sell the property, they'll take the cash and like, okay, we'll take all of that and pay it. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned old people. I mean, a lot. What about, and I mean, you and I have worked together, especially on things like this and trying to prepare, which we still need to sort out some details. But we've seen a lot of, and this topic came about because we've seen a lot of famous people in the news. They get money, but they still aren't preparing. And so then I'm like, hey, probate issues, because now they're not prepared for their death, because they assume that regardless of the fact that they're rich, or maybe especially for the fact that they're rich, but they're young. So nothing not really going to happen to them. And so I have time to prepare. Coming from a probate, somebody who is experiencing it from the back end, like now that we have to figure things out on the back end, do you have any suggestions for people to prepare to not get to the point where we're paying you way more money to figure it out?
Yeah. So, and sometimes people don't think they have anything. So let me back up. You should prepare by at least having a will to say how you want your stuff to go. And like my dad would say, he doesn't care about what happens to him after he's gone. That's a selfish approach. And but they do care when you tell them like, oh, well, so-and-so can end up having that, or so it can go this way, or the cost. There's stuff you can do to prepare. You should try to get all those other documents just in case you can't do it, but at least depends on what you have. For example, I don't know how you guys, if you guys own your home, or some people just may have 401ks. Now that's property and that's considered a non-probate asset if you name a beneficiary, right?
Gotcha.
So if you don't, it's coming into the estate. And then we have to figure out how to share it.
What if this just popped into my head? What if you have a 401k? Say the beneficiary and the 401k dead with you, two on a dead together. And they didn't have a will, and outside of that, you don't have a will. Do you have any idea where that money, whose estate that's going to?
So the answer is the typical lawyer response, it depends, right? And then also I would cautiously respond to that, this is not to give you, I can't speak to New Jersey.
Legal advice.
Example.
Gotcha.
50 different states, 50 different probably approaches to this. But in Texas, you're gonna always look till you find an heir, and you're gonna keep searching until you find an heir. So let's say, okay, all right, the answer is gonna depend on whether the person is married, and if the person is married, or if they have children, when the children were they part of this marriage, or were they outside children, and then go on so on and so forth. You can keep looking. You will always find an heir.
Got it. Okay. What about people that said? Go ahead.
I'm working on an estate. I haven't technically started because the family's so big. So this family it goes back to the 1800s. So I'm kind of excited to work on it.
What?
And yes, the Reconstruction period, they own it. It's a Black family, and here in Texas.
It sounds like money.
Money.
Huh?
Sounds like money.
And
We like.
yeah, it's gonna be a big deal. But a lot of heirs. When we started looking, my client only knew of, like he said, it was only like he knows of like his side, his branch of the tree. But when you start searching and going back, because the property's in the heir's name going back, she I think died like the early 1900s. I mean, when I say early, I mean early. She was born like 1880 or something.
Jesus.
So, and
how is this just happening now? I'm just not understanding.
Well, so essentially, and I find this to be a thing in Texas where it's a very common thing. Like they may not think they own any property at all, but they do own. So they're part of a family member and they own like 100 acres. So they as just like how we migrate from Jamaica, they just migrate to different parts of the state or different part of this country. They're there and they just lose contact with their family member. But there's somebody on that land who over the years continue to pay the property taxes. It only becomes an issue when they're like, when somebody like, oh, nobody's paying the property taxes. And now they're like, who's paying it? We're about to take it. Land is always going to be owned by someone. And there's two rules. Land is always owned by someone, and a dead person never owns property. Keep that in mind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Dead person never owned. Okay.
So when you're trying to lock on and make all this money, what I love is when I hear people say, I sleep when I'm dead. You're trying to make all the money you can. That's exactly what you're going to do. And you're not going to own it when you die.
Right.
Not going with you? No?
And title change immediately upon death. It's going to change one of two ways, either by a will or by the law.
Got you. Okay. Well, what about people who say they have nothing? I don't have no children. I'm not married. I don't own no house. I'm just building. Why would I be concerned about this? Like, as you said, who cares, about if I did at this point? I don't really own any stake in anything right now. I don't have any, Yeah.
I respect that position. It's just that from their perspective, I own nothing. So I'm not going to go spend money to get these documents in place. You guys are like this. The way I would look at it, I remember this she's a nurse here, and I don't know her personally. But I went to a Jamaican diaspora thing here, and she wanted me to do her will, and she said, "Look, I don't know if I want to do the will because I told my kids nobody's gonna get rich when I'm dead off me. I pay for your school. I pay, look for nothing when I'm dead. I'm enjoying my money." And that's a fair approach. I can't knock that. I mean, she said nobody has student loans. She made sure everyone's set. And I mean, it depends. It depends. But like, I think if we were to search in Jamaica and go looking back to family land, I bet you we all find land. Like you own you maybe not us, as unless you lost your parents. But somebody owns it.
Larry, can I ask a question? You mentioned documents. Is
Yes,
there
that was my next
package of documents that people should be thinking when you say estate planning? It's a will and what else? Like, what's the document?
Okay. So, there are various types. The will is what the most common piece. That transferred property, like I said, when someone passes. But you may have let's talk about your health, the medical power of attorney. You could be just ill, can't speak, in a coma, or maybe not that extreme, but you just can't make decisions on your own. So that's where the medical power of attorney comes into place, and that's where you give somebody you trust, and you can depend on that can make these kinds of decisions for you. You may have heard about the directive to physician. That's where you basically it asks like, okay, if I am ill and I'm dying, I have a terminal condition, do you want to stay on life support or do you want to just be comfortable? That's called a living will. That's the other name. So that's something you want to put in place. Trying to remember the name of the case, but it was a big case, and I remember it was going on while I was in law school, where a husband and wife, I think they were about to divorce or whatever, but wife ended up being on the life support for many, many, many years. And
Yeah,
You heard
the
about it?
parents.
yeah,
Yeah, the parents versus the husband.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the case, but that's a big deal. But going back to documents, and I mentioned, and these documents, I don't know if the names are changing by the state, but if you have kids, you may want to name who you want to take care of your kids, and I've seen that in court where we've relied on that before. Just last year. I want to address the trust, because I hear a lot of people talking about doing trust. I don't recommend trust for everybody in every situation. It really depends on if you're rich, going to that, and you want to do tax planning, like you put stuff in. I don't give tax advice, by the way, but you want to. No, I mean, it's one, I have not been keeping up with that kind of stuff in years. And
Gotcha.
two, I don't want anybody trying to sue me because
Gotcha. Okay, I like your disclaimer. Continue.
Yeah, but it depends. Depends on the amount of assets you have, and if you want to try to plan, like, this is important. So you've heard of gift taxes, and you've heard of the death tax, and this usually affects rich people. You have a certain amount of assets, and when the person passes, gift taxes, you can only give about a certain amount. I believe it's like, I don't want to quote the number that you can give, because I'm not, I have to refresh my memory. I don't have these type of clients. So they don't come up with 11, I think it's like 11 million. You can give like 11 million. And after that, you're taxed by the government. Same thing with death taxes. You have a certain amount of assets. When you pass, then the government, like, look, it's time to pay up. Like Monopoly, you play a Monopoly game. But you pay the taxes. So you may want to create trust and all sorts of planning in advance. The rich have all sorts of trust to get around all of this, but it's planning. The average person don't have that problem, or won't have that problem. So you don't need to create a trust. Another thing is, when you put something in a trust, you're taking it out of your name, and then now the trust owns it, right? So it depends on what you're trying to do. You may have to spend tons of money to unwind the trust to take back title to the property. So if it's not something that, I just want to put it in a trust, I'm like, you could probably put it in a company. to protect it. There's other vehicles for asset protection if you're just trying to do it to protect creditors. Maybe just put it in a company, but it all depends on what you're trying to do. I wouldn't just create a trust for the sake of creating a trust. And another thing about a trust, you're gonna need a trustee. So you need all of this. You really need somebody you can depend on and can trust.
Unintended.
Yes. I want to get it. You asked a question earlier. I can't remember. I think you asked why, something to do like, why should you have estate planning? Or why should you plan? A common thing I find is where you have someone, it's not even a black or white person, or it's just people just make decisions. Like you may have a child that you really, really trust, and the other ones you don't really, really trust. And you're like, oh, this person will make sure everything I need done. That person will do it. That's a lawsuit in the future. They're gonna fight.
Wait, what?
You mean in the absence of a will?
Or even in a will, they'll name it to one kid, and the others are like
even in the will.
Yes, I've seen it. I've had it even last year where someone they trust. So I just use a real life example for one of my cases. Husband and wife, very close-knit family. They have one daughter, two sons. The daughter is very successful. And the sons, I think they're okay, but they're just not as successful. She's a pharmacist. And mom and dad created a will, and they left everything to the daughter. They're like, she'll do the right thing and share with her brothers. Well, right now, one of the brothers, the last I spoke to my client, the husband died, so wife is still alive. One of the sons, he's pissed off because when I prorated the estate, I had to send a copy of the will because the court said it's not the original. And when it's not the original document, it's a presumption that it's revoked. So the will was revoked. So we have to send it out to everybody and say we're probating a copy, and give you opportunity to dispute if you want to. So he read it and he saw that everything went to his sister. So he's pissed at his mom. I've even seen it where someone is about to die and they left the house. Like, one of the kids, she convinced them, just leave it in my name, I'll do it and share it. And then she started evicting her nieces and nephews out of the house, and it's my house, but fortunately it wasn't, they still had an interest in something.
Yeah.
Yo, I'm surprised we haven't even talked about how Jamaicans stay with land and how this mess happens in Jamaica.
Kill off people.
I'll kill off people. Yes,
kill off people over things.
It's real. I agree. That's a problem.
Agreed, yeah.
Even if somebody says I'm leaving the land, but it's a lot of it is just people just don't care in, or they're like, oh, the land go from, I was telling you when I went to, I don't know if I told you guys, but when I went to Jamaica last, Debbie has a farm and she was showing me how because mommy's like, how do you know where your farm stop? She's like, between that tree and that tree is where the land stop. That's it. That's kind of how they do things. And then she's like, and this part got sectioned off, from this tree to around that tree over there got sectioned off, and this is my mother's land, and then that is my aunt's land, and I'm like, what the heck? So no fight, because people in Jamaica, you start getting greedy. Not to say this was her case, but fight over stupidness, like fight over land, fight over house that on land that don't belong to you, like land and house different. It is madness.
Because sometimes people allow people to build houses on the land
right.
at a point, and
then claim it.
Right, or the person who gave permission gone, and though other people take your house off on the land. I have a question. If you have a will, is it after you pass that it gets probated, or can you go enter your own will somewhere?
That's an excellent question. So a will is not effective until the person dies. That's actually a very
also, I can't take my will go.
Yeah, it's not. You can always revoke it too, and you can only just have one will. You can have copies.
They can just rip up the will and start over. What do you mean revoke it? Like, is there a formal process to revoke it?
Okay. Remember, it's a presumption. If you can't find it when someone passes, a presumption that, or like I said, in a copy of the will, there's a rebuttable presumption that that will was revoked. So, you know,
So make sure you date your wills.
yes, or tear them up. There's a thing called, if you want to change your will, we call it, you add like a codicil. It's the same process that you execute a will. It's just a document you attach, like you're making changes to the will. I like to just do a whole new will. You know, I don't like the whole codicil, first codicil, second codicil. It's where you have some people who are like, I'm gonna leave you out of my will, and they just keep going back and forth. And so it's a lot of changes. And that can create some there too. Yeah.
Sound like a true
Boy,
Jamaican.
Larry, I think I needed to make me. Okay, I think I need a will.
Let me ask
There
a
you go.
question about forms, because I think there's a lot of people, as you're talking about, you know, trust and how beneficial is it if you don't have a bunch of money, really, to both establish and maintain a trust. If someone's trying to save a couple dollars on their will, is it okay to go online and print out one of those like fillable forms?
That's another good question.
Sorry, like, let me Google this.
Notarized by my friend. Like, is that a thing?
May I go to
So
Larry?
legal Zoom, I used to, you know, again, you're upset when someone has the issues when you're younger and you're green and like, oh, this issue, and you go to court and they're like, well, this is an issue. You need to do this. You need to do that. The thing about LegalZoom, I think those forms are fine if you are familiar with wills, and meaning like you're maybe an estate planning attorney and you can tweak the forms. But if you're a lay person, you don't know what you need to have in there. I'm going to give you an example of what I've seen in the courtroom, like when someone brings a will, and the will will say, I name John Doe to be the executor of my estate. The word independent, is one word, needs to say independent executor, but the typical document just says executor. It doesn't say independent, just executor. What that creates is, if you don't, let's say there are other heirs, everybody has to agree for that person to serve if it doesn't have the word independent. They're like, we need you to go back to everyone and get them to approve this person, because the will is missing one word, the word independent. Now, most cases you may find a family like, okay, no problem. But you do have those special cases where one person's like, no, I don't like such and such, I'm not gonna agree. That now, instead of doing it as an independent administration where we do everything outside of court that needs to be done, we now have to do it as a dependent administration, which I'm starting to like, because that's way more money in legal fees.
So yeah, man, go on legal, go get it download your form.
Yeah, go do it. So we have to undo that to redo it. And I'm like, okay, great. You know, I didn't see that blessing coming, but thank you.
I'm done. You either go listen or
pay more money.
learn.
Right. Pay more money. Well, let's talk about the rich people. I'm curious why you think, obviously, you know, obviously these aren't your clients, these big
I wish I had them, but I don't have them.
Don't worry. I see it in your future. I got you. But why do you think they're leaving with no will, even after they've gained so much money?
So people don't like talking about their demise. You know, that's the one thing. Whenever someone's like, I don't want to do it, I don't want to talk about it, you know, because I mean, it's just scary. But and they're also not thinking about what's going to happen with their stuff after. You know, they just don't care. And again, it's probably, if you don't care, then good.
Good for them. Good for you. Good for who?
Definitely good for the attorneys. I'm trying to think of someone dying without a will.
Someone like who? Because there's enough people.
Prince, for example.
Prince.
So when Prince passed, he didn't have a will, but they didn't find a will.
Crazy to me, by the way. Like, blows my whole mind. Because Prince was not 20 when he died.
But we didn't expect him to die.
And he had a lot, like he was gifted, so he had a lot of like music and
so
stuff.
I like to use Prince as an example in my presentation. So that estate was really good in the sense that, like you said, he had a lot of assets. and both his parents, he's not married, no children. And I think the article I read said 40 people showed up and said they were heirs. 40.
Child, they should have
I
let
didn't
me
know.
know.
Right. I'm like, where was the memo? I would have
And so
shown
if you're
up.
an attorney, the court has to go and weed all those people out and say, nope, this person's not an heir, not an heir. Imagine the feast, for in legal fees.
Right.
And to go through all of that, right? And essentially, it was his siblings who end up becoming his heirs. Because in Texas, the way I would say that, okay, this person died with no children, no parents alive, so I do it like a cross. I look down, are there any children? No children. I look up, no parents. Then I look to the side, siblings.
Got it.
That's
Okay,
interesting
that's
though,
a
because
nice
I
one.
think I'm always baffled by that, because I'm like, here was a person who was smart enough to know he needed to own his masters. He wouldn't work with other artists who didn't own their masters because he didn't want to create product that he didn't have ownership of, and then not have a will or some type of planning.
My mind.
It kind of.
I'll give you another artist too, that's like that, similar. James Brown. He did have a will. It just wasn't updated. It wasn't updated, and that was a big mess too. So,
Updated. What do you mean?
Wait, what do you mean updated?
It was old, so it didn't have the info.
old,
It wasn't.
so-
It didn't have updated.
So, like, he had a wife and a child after creating the will.
Oh.
It became a mess, and they fought for many, many years. Imagine the feast.
Dang. Imagine the feast. That's all you can think about, Lawrence. Imagine the money
Okay,
their
so that
attorneys
makes
made
sense.
off
It's not
of
a
it.
set it and forget it. You have to update as your life.
You still go and tweak it. Yeah. And granted, the way it's written, it's kind of, we try to make it broad. So if you came to me and you say, I want to just have a simple will, I'm gonna, Misha, I still owe. You're waiting on me. And
No comment.
I wouldn't, for example, if I'm writing for my cousin, I wouldn't put I know I kind of have an idea what she has. I wouldn't put, I want you to leave this. I know her situation, and I would just say whatever she has likely gonna go to her children, right? But I wouldn't put house, cars, and all that, because she's likely gonna, she's young, she's gonna probably switch out the cars many times. So I wouldn't specifically. You could, but I wouldn't. I would just say, just generally, like, she wants everything to go to so and so, and then stuff like that.
Yeah.
Interesting. There was another question I was going to ask you, and no, I'm drawing a blank.
I was wondering about life insurance. You know how a lot of people, the thing now is to buy life insurance. How does that work out when you pass? Is that a good investment?
As opposed to a will,
insurance,
or in addition to a will?
I think in addition. I have 3 policies. They're not a lot of money, but I have them. And the idea for you to have insurance, you're supposed to save to replace it. So your 401k should replace it. That's the idea why they encourage you to do term, right?
Wait, say that again? One more time.
So if you talk to a financial planner, they'll try to encourage you to do term because it's cheaper, it's easier to sell. But they're like, okay, if you buy 20, 30 years, over that 20, 30 years, you're supposed to, your savings, your 401k should be like up there where you don't really need this insurance policy, right? So I'm still struggling. So I'm like, I still need to leave them something in case something happens to me. And keep in mind, a life insurance is what we would call a non-probate asset, right? So, and let me explain that. When you have the insurance policy is really a contract. It's an agreement between you and the insurance company. So, they're going to follow what's written in the document. So if you listed an heir, they're just going to pay it out. All the person just got to show up, show the death certificate, and identify who they are, and they just pay it out. That doesn't go to court. Creditors can't get access to that. It doesn't come into the estate. It just goes straight to the person. Your bank account is also considered a non-probate asset. You just name your heirs, whoever you want. And let's say you have your bank account with a husband and wife. there's two of you. When one passed, likely that has some kind of survivorship language where it'll be whoever survived will then have that account to themselves. But you know, if you name a beneficiary, they'll pay a payment on death. That's what it's called for a bank account. They'll pay it out. If not, it comes into the estate. Your 401k, same thing, will be considered a non-probate asset. And again, you want to name a beneficiary. Look into that. Make sure you have somebody. If not, it's coming into your estate.
Interesting. No wonder
For the
people kill
fees.
people all the time. To the
And a trust will be considered non-probate, you know. Yeah. We also have a thing here in Texas. I'm sure it's in other states where you call transfer on death deed or ladybird deed, where you may have a house and they're like, I don't want probate for my family, and it's just a deed. Just like the will is revocable at any time, but the house, for example, if you want to leave it, and when the person passes, it's their property to do whatever they want to do. But upon death, it doesn't come into their estate; it just goes to whoever they put on that deed.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
wait a sec, you could do that like now, you could update your deed to say at my passing, this house transfers to.
It's a particular type of deed. It's called a transfer on death deed. Ladybird deed, so you may hear of that. But it's, again, this deed is revocable, so you can file it. It's the unique thing about that here, like you can't just have it. Some people, you may give a deed and they're like, oh, just put this up, and they put it in the safe, and it stays in the safe. This type of deed, you need to have it recorded, because if you have it and the person died and you're like, oh, I didn't record it until after they're dead, they're like, yeah, it's no good.
Right.
Yeah.
Larry, I was reading something this week that says parents should not, for example, if you have a house, you should not leave the house, put like on the will, don't leave the house to the kids, because then they end up paying more taxes. They should put it in like, I forgot what he was saying, but pretty much don't let, for example, if I were to die, I wouldn't name my child on my will.
Yeah, I can
to
tell
get
you.
the house.
Yeah, so I can think of a few legal issues with that. So one, just right off the top, when you have a minor, they can't enter into any kind of contracts, first of all. So if they need to do something with the house, it's their house, it will be their property, but they can't really make this. They don't have the capacity to handle it. So that's right off the top. The other issue too is when you come into when you just as children, say property taxes, for example, and a lot of times, let's say like your parents are over 65, they may have paying at a discount, and then it switches over. Now you have property taxes are just like maybe thousands of dollars building up, and now who can it's in this child's name. Now you're going to have to probably do like some kind of guardianship. It's going to be a lot of legal fees just to kind of step in. You may have to sell the property and all sorts of stuff. So I can see the various issues in leaving it in a minor's name, you know, especially if there's no like cash or a trust to take care of it. But it happens. It's often.
So that's what it was saying. They were saying to instead of writing the will, and not just for a minor, but instead of writing the will and having the house directly go to the child, whether a minor or an adult, but to leave it as a trust, like put it. My brain is not working, but something about like doing a trust instead of an actual, just sign it over to the child.
Right. So even in your will, you can set it up in your will where the will create a trust. So if you have a minor child, you can say, look, if there's any minors, then we want the will to create a trust and put the property, and then you would name in there who you want to be the trustee to function and make decisions on behalf. It's still for the child. The property just goes to the trust, and the person will then be able to make decisions on behalf, like a trustee is now appointed.
So you don't have to create the trust now. You can, in your will, give directions to create the trust.
If there's a minor,
include any minor children.
Yeah. And this can go on too. Like, say you have grandchildren. You know, I don't know, Misha. You remember Mark, our friend Mark that passed?
Yep.
So Mark had he died like at 42, but he has a minor child and he's an only child. So his mother has a house here. So if something happens to his mom, she's still alive and well. She's from Trinidad. Something happens to her, I'm sure it's gonna go to that child, and he's a baby. You know, so.
Got you.
That's interesting. I don't think I realized that the will and the will can be the trigger for a trust.
Didn't know that
To
either.
create the trust.
Yeah.
It can create. You left language in there to create the trust. So it doesn't exist.
True.
Yeah.
Because the trust has a minimum, right? You can't have a trust unless you have some minimum amount, right?
So that's another good question. So like to create a trust, you need of course you need a trustee and you need trust property. And it could be anything. You could put $1. You know, you
Oh,
gotta
just
fund,
$1?
yeah, just any kind of asset to fund it. Yeah.
Okay.
I tell people to get a what I'll do normally, the trust that I do, I'll create like simple trust. I'll create like I'll get the tax ID for the trust and I'll just, go open a bank account, put some money in it in the name of the trust.
Okay.
But Larry, I think some of what gets complicated, at least to me, when I think about a trust, I think, okay, trusts are for rich people, which I know is not the case, but that is the sort of, social thinking about a trust. It feels very elite in some ways. And maybe it feels that way because we don't understand the workings of it, right? Like if it's as simple as creating one,
it's expensive.
Who maintains it? Do you pay? Like all these things that have to do with what happens after you establish it, because it feels like it's not just something you set and forget. Like you have to maintain it.
Yeah, so you have to have a trustee, and that's who would maintain it.
Can you be the trustee of the trust?
I can tell you why you don't want to do that. So we generally don't want the person creating the trust to be the trustee or the beneficiary to both be the trustee, because then creditors can raid the trust. But
creditors can do what to the trust?
Raid the trust. So you usually put your asset in the trust for asset protection, generally, right? And if you just think about it, it makes sense. If you say, I'm rich, I want to put this over here, I just want these people to come after it. And you say, I'm going to be the trustee of my own trust, which you can do, and you want to be the beneficiary. Let's say you went to the mall and you just had a blast and ran up your credit cards. And now these credit card companies, by the way, are suing to collect. And they're like, yeah, I want to collect. And you're like, well, sorry, I don't have it. It's in the trust. And they're like, okay, let's talk about that trust. You are the trustee and you're also the beneficiary. So you have the power to make the decision. And it's also your benefit. So the court's going to we're going to merge them and say, yeah, we rated. You can get the assets. You get access to those assets. Sell something and pay it off.
Wow.
Larry, you just reminded me of something I heard on a podcast about a trust. Someone said, actually, when you name the trust, name it something far from your name or anything associated with you. Just name it something wild. And it might be related to what you just said.
Yep. We're searching on the name. So I think typically when you do it, let's say if I were to name, I would typically when we created it, say it'll just have like the person's name, the trust, and
like Eulette Trust.
Lawrence Eulette. Yes, Lawrence Eulette Trust, something like that. And so you were searching. If you're searching and you're here it is, pops up. You'll see it. It wouldn't, the banks are their fees are like 5%.
Right.
So like a minimum, let's say it's $1 million. I think what is that?
I don't know, $50,000 maybe.
Yeah, I may be lying. Let me see. It's $1 million times 0.05. So their fees are high. Maybe not. Maybe I'm off with the 50,000. Maybe it's not 5%, but they're like at a minimum they're taking maybe like $5,000 a year in fees.
Yeah.
So it
money
wouldn't
gone
work
in no time.
Yeah. So they don't even want it because they know their fees and they have to. They have to charge that because they have to get bonds and make sure. They have to do a lot to make sure to protect it. You can get someone you trust and they squander it, and the person like, ooh, well, so that's why I like a commercial, like a bank, a big bank to serve.
Like, you either pay the bank or you're
You're trusting them for real.
somebody.
Yeah,
Wow.
you got to find somebody you really trust.
So at a minimum, even if you don't do the trust because, you know, you don't have enough money or, you know, you don't want to deal with all that, at a minimum, there should be a will in place, even if that will dictates things that will happen after. Things that should have been in place, should go in place, can be dictated by the will, is what you're saying. At baseline, we need to have a will.
Correct.
Got it. And speaking of children, at what point should I start telling my children this? Because I don't think at any point my parents were like, you need a will, you need a will, you need a will. Though I'm pretty sure my parents have always had a will, always had life insurance for as long as I've known it. It has always just been a given. They talk about it all the time, but they've never said to me, do you have a will? Do you have life insurance? Never. So at what point I guess and they're assuming that I'm smart enough to do this, though I don't know why they would give me so much credit because no, I'm not. So what point do I need to start talking to my children about these things, or making sure that people around me are having these things at a minimum?
So that's going to probably be one of those, it depends on the child type situation, how mature they are to receive it and understand it. I would say not so much when to tell them, but maybe where they know where to find important documents if something happens to you. And then if they know, like, look here, if something's going to happen. Like my mom has a safety deposit box. And so she put my name on it a long time ago. I don't know if anybody else is on there, but I know I'm on it. So if something happens to her, I would go there. So for anything. So, you know, and so that I would think is more like, you know, kind of teach them, you know, in advance as far as, but anytime, you never know. I mean, you have young parents who passed away. I'm working on an estate right now. Mom died, she was like 36, like last year. I actually have another guardianship I did last year. My client, she had 2 daughters, and both of them passed away in their 30s before her.
Wow.
All her, she has a granddaughter that she's taking care of. So you never know. I mean, anyone else can go at any time.
Yeah.
So as soon as they become adults, 18, you need a will, you need a will, you need a will. Start from now.
Yeah, I would say, would you believe I don't have one?
Okay, this is where we end the podcast, but thank you guys.
Good day, sir. Good day. All of this.
Where we end.
I started it. It's just really, you know, thinking about it. It's like,
You do know we're keeping this in the part. We know we're keeping it, right? This part.
Have to keep because I'll miss it.
We are editing this out. Okay.
I don't edit anything.
You should have it. I'll do it this weekend. When I do yours, I'll do it.
In other words, it's not getting done this weekend, guys. Every weekend is it.
That is hilarious. I will say though, it's a little hard when you think about it. If you're a single person with no kids and you're putting together a will, part of it is like, what is the motivation here? Like, I get it that I should have, but am I really that motivated? And then you really have to give some thought to who do you trust that's going to carry this out?
Yep.
Girl, or the feast. Because something's gonna happen. Larry has told us a few important things. One, somebody about to own that. Somebody's gonna own it.
Because you can't own it upon death.
When
Upon death, you own
single
nothing.
as you might be, it's not gonna go ownerless.
It's not.
I never actually thought of that, because people are like, it's not going to you, but it's going to somebody. It's going
somewhere.
Don't get it twisted. It is
Do you
going
want to
somebody.
decide?
Right. Do you decide who it goes to, or do we? Or does the government? That's who we is. Interesting.
That's a good point of view.
Awesome.
Right
Anything-
now, I'm just on the feast plan, and I need to get off the feast plan.
Me too. Larry won't even help me get off the feast. He want bandwagon is
It's
feast.
gonna be fees. It's not. If you have your plan, it's gonna be less fees.
Yeah.
But
It's
Yeah.
So,
gonna be
Eva, how much
feast
is it to
anyway.
create a will for somebody?
so I do mine really cheap.
I love how you
use.
preempt that.
I do. No, I do my. I have colleagues who charge thousands for what I do, but I don't do like anything complex, right? So I will. So just to tell you, I do a packet when I do it. I do all whatever they need, and I normally just charge $500. That's really cheap. And I don't. If I'm doing the will, if someone says I don't want the packet, then I'm like, all right, I'm going to charge you for 1 hour of my time, which is $350. So that's super cheap.
Yeah. Guys, this deal is not forever. This video will be up forever, but its prices. Yesterday's price? Okay.
It's not today's price.
So if you want
So you-
lawyer Larry, move
So
fast.
it's different. So if someone has a will, they come to me and they're like, okay, I have a will, we want to probate it. In Texas, we have what's called, let's say there's no creditors, we don't need to do an administration. We can do what's called a muniment of title, which is to get the will admitted to probate. And that's all it is. All we're doing is getting the will admitted to probate. And think of it in word when we say that, what that means is like it's published, it's going to be at the courthouse. So it's going to survive us. The county's going to maintain that document. It's published for the world to see at any time. We're like, who gets what from this person? This is what I want to happen. It's there. It's going to survive us. So long story short, we can do that. I'll charge about $1,500 plus the cost, which is probably another, that's cheap. If
That's
you
when
don't,
we gone though.
yes, it's not you, yeah, your state will pay.
Mhm.
And if not, I mean, at a minimum, we're charging $3,500.
Mm.
There's a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
Right. So
make less work for you and it's cheaper.
it's gonna be better as far as, like I said, like a lot of people don't realize, like you own property, you may not realize it, but you own it. I use this example all the time in Texas where we have a lot of land. It's not uncommon for someone to say we are heir of property in this part of Texas, and it's like 100 acres, but it's like 200 people that shares. It just keeps going down. Remember, it's always that person doesn't own it, so the heirs, it just keeps just going down and going down. Yeah. So, and that's the case. I mean, I think that's the case for even family I know on my mom's side. On my mom's side of the family in Jamaica. So it's the same concept. All this same concept.
Makes
I'm
sense.
sure. Yeah.
Well, tell the people where we can find you because you're not trying to hide. And actually, maybe don't tell them because then if the more people come to you, the less chance of me getting mine done. So I will cut this part out. But for the people on this call, tell them where they can find you.
Well, they probably don't need because this podcast I know is worldwide.
Okay.
I'm only licensed in Texas, and Texas is like it was once a country. It's very big. So
Wait, so you can't do people in New Jersey, Will?
I'm not licensed in New Jersey, so I wouldn't. I can give you a Texas will, and I don't know that would how that's going to work out for you.
Interesting.
That was my
Then,
next question.
looky there. Never mind. I thought there were some, how medical. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good.
No, I'm saying, how medical licenses and some like bar, you take the bar somewhere and it works. Oh, Texas, New York, Florida, or something like that.
I don't know
thought
no
that was
bar
it.
like that. What bar is
Yeah,
that?
man.
Unless you
Like I
do
know the one in New York is New York, New Jersey,
Oh,
New
got you.
Jersey, and
I
a
thought you
couple other
meant like,
places.
okay, got you.
Yeah.
Okay, I
So
get what
yes,
you're saying.
like Texas offer reciprocity. I always struggle with that word. So if you're licensed in New York, but you have to go through the process of getting it established.
Right.
Okay.
You can wave into the bar too.
Yeah.
But because New Jersey, New York is, if you were in New Jersey or if you're licensed in Delaware, Delaware is this big. So it makes sense. And because the rules are a lot the same, it makes sense to like group them together. but Texas is not this. So
And they
it's its own-
very different. We trying to
very different. Okay.
yeah, we trying to get rid
Okay.
of them. Anyway.
Right.
We're better. But, yeah.
We're better. Larry
No,
said that with
sir.
his chest.
No,
Larry
sir.
said that with
No.
his chest.
I just
okay.
saw a list of banned books from Texas. But let's
Banned
not go. I
what?
digress.
No,
Banned books.
That's a dog.
I
and pony.
digress.
Ma'am,
That's
there are banned books and you don't let's not
No,
talk about
ma'am.
that.
You don't even want to know the list.
That is,
There are banned
that-
books
that is,
in Florida. How
that's
about that?
entertainment.
Florida
That's
too. Y'all are cousins.
No, we're not. They're like distant
We
cousins.
are. We are.
Larry, you're not helping.
The weirdest things happen in Texas and Florida.
That is very true. But still. Anyway, did you tell the people where they can find you if they're in Texas?
Yes, I don't have a website either. I did have a website, and it didn't bring me any business, so I got rid of that. But like I said, my case is someone told me I need to have a
You're a
landing.
referral guy.
Yeah, 100%. So they
Okay.
don't know they need me until you need
They
me.
need you.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
So that's
All
why
right.
I'm like going for it, but you're not gonna find me, and you don't know. They don't even know what a probate attorney is.
Mhm.
So
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll put some details in the show notes somewhere, but we appreciate you sharing some information. Even now, I'm sure there are a ton of things that I still don't know, but I am way more knowledgeable than I was 30 minutes ago, 40 minutes ago. So we appreciate you sharing your time
Thank you.
and your knowledge.
Thanks, Larry.
thanks for having me.
And we hope we never need you. Hashtag that is all.
Everyone needs him.
Yeah,
So
really, not you, but somebody will. Which
Somebody was
thinking-
crazy enough to not get a will, people. Somebody.
thinking in terms like you have accumulated some